Hello, my friends. I'm Dr. Tracy Lewis. Welcome to Victory Over Grief. This is going to be an exciting moment in your life. Trust me, your life will never be the same. You will have victory over grief. Hey, friends, it's Dr. Tracy. Welcome to Victory Over Grief. We are on action plan time. We are on what we expressed to you in the very beginning of this course and this seminar and gathering that we are doing to get victory together over grief. That when we experience grief and when we experience loss, there are a series of actions that must be taken place to remove the pain of loss. And now we are getting ready to do it. I talked to you the last couple of lessons about some very vital things that are important to your ability to now take this action process. I'm so proud of all of you, and I've enjoyed the engagements that we've had discussing different matters of the heart. And now I think you know that it's actually a good thing that you've experienced grief in some kind of way in your life. Not the loss that you've experienced, but the grief that came with it. Because from that, you've become self-aware of some things. You become aware of the lack of the core that you need, the support that you need, the 10 things that every person needs maybe were lacking in your life, or the quality and the ability to have the capacity for you to have the knowledge or the intellectual capacity or the emotional capacity, the relational capacity, so that you can handle the adversity capacity. And I've really enjoyed sharing those truths with you, and I've enjoyed sharing with you about those 10 things that every person needs in order to be whole. And maybe throughout this week you have looked at yourself and you have questioned whether or not those things were really missing in your foundation, and can you and have you taken time to put them in your foundation of wholeness, your foundation of wellness. So we've learned a lot of exciting things over the past several weeks. We are now on our 6th lesson about grief, and I'm telling you, it's been an incredible time to see each of you discover things about yourself and become more self-aware in the process. From this process, we begin to become self-aware of different areas inside of us and different things on the outside of us that are impacting our lives. So wellness involves being aware of ourselves as a human being, as a whole. Do we have meaningful relationships? Do we have understanding about life and its experiences? And are we emotionally fit to have the capacity to handle all the things and trials and situations that come to our life, so that we can handle the adversities that come and the losses that we often experience? Wellness directly is related to the longevity of our life, but it is also related to the quality of our life. Longevity is important, but if we live in survival mode and we never have quality life and experience quality relationships and quality happiness and the things that wellness brings, then maybe we're missing out on a lot of things that we shouldn't. And losses kind of bring those things to the surface. They remove the hidden pieces or the coverings that have caused us to hide the fact that we feel alone, or to hide the fact that we don't feel appreciated or accepted, or we don't feel safe. So losses actually can work together for our good, to learn more things about ourselves so that we can heal them, we can change them, and we can see and perceive our world as a different place than we did while we were carrying loss. I hope that makes sense to you. Today, I just want to briefly touch on those 8 rivers that flow into our tree. But before we do, I want to remind you that Psalm chapter 1 says that you, as a human being that God created, are to be likened unto a tree that is planted by the rivers of water. And those rivers of water assist you in bringing about a quality, balanced life. And so today we're going to talk about those 8 rivers that should be flowing into your tree. Like we talked about the core, and we talked about the root system and the importance of that tree to be nurtured properly. When grief and loss come to our life, those rivers that are trying to stay balanced in our life often get clogged with debris, and loss is what brings that debris. So what are those 8 rivers of wholeness? We're going to talk about those in just a minute, but let me tell you what wellness looks like. We briefly talked about it in our Zoom meeting last week, but I want to bring it out again to remind you of some of the things that wellness looks like. Wellness is the presence of purpose in life. So when wellness is involved and wholeness and balance are involved, then there is an evidence or a presence of purpose in your life. Wellness also has present with them an active involvement in work and play in one's life. Wellness also has the presence of joyful, fulfilling relationships, and it also has healthy living environments and a healthy body. And the last one is that wellness brings the presence of happiness. So we can see that there are important things that are present in our lives if, in fact, we are well and we live whole lives and we are balanced. We have a presence of purpose, a presence of quality of life and healthy living experiences, and also a healthy body. And we have the ability to actively be involved in healthy relationships, and we also have joyful fulfillment in those relationships. So are those things present in your life? Maybe you need some work on the rivers. Maybe you need to question and resolve whether or not you have a good score, let's say it that way, in making sure that all the 8 rivers that are flowing into your life are complete, are whole, are absent from debris. They're not clogged up, they're not jammed up by the losses that you've experienced. Because when we don't deal with those core issues and when we don't remove the pain that loss brings, then our balance gets off. And the things that we spend our time on and the ways that we move about in life are challenged. So I'm going to share now those 8 rivers of wholeness. And in your email, you're going to find a handout that will tell you and question you regarding these 8 rivers. That are going to flow in and out of your life, and you're going to have to answer some brutally honest questions, and then score those questions so that you know where your balance needs to be improved, where your wellness is off a little bit, where you're doing well, and the areas that you've already cleaned and cleared the path for yourself to be able to be healthy. What are those 8 rivers? So these 8 rivers include our emotions. Are they well balanced? Our environment. Are we living and planted in the right place? Are we surrounded by the right environment, a positive environment, a healthy environment, a life-speaking environment, something that will bring wholeness and excitement and enlargement and capacity in our lives? So our emotions, our environment, our finances. How is our financial situation? Is it well balanced? Are we living within our means? Are we stretching ourselves outside of things because of jacked up relationships, or because of imbalance in other areas, or because of pain that's in our life that we've entered into financial disruption? Then we have our intellectual balance. Are we balancing our emotions with our learning? Are we balancing our intellect in this area? Are the rivers of intelligence, are the rivers of learning flowing into our life? Are we continuing to grow? Are we continuing to evolve in our understanding, not only in our knowledge, but in our understanding? So then we have from the intellect, then we can also go into the occupational or our purpose driven. Is our occupation or our purpose being manifest in our daily life? And is there a balance that we are not only spending time learning, but we are spending time doing and fulfilling our purpose? How is our social and relational balance? Are we taking time to interact with other people? Are we taking time for pleasure? Are we taking time for healthy relationships? So our social has another aspect. Our physical is another one. Are we taking care of our body? Are we making sure that there's balance in our eating, balance in our sleep, balance in our work time, balance in our play, and also, last but not least, our spiritual. So is our river of the spiritual things, are we growing spiritually? Are we having daily spiritual experiences and encounters with the supernatural plan and divine power of God, with revelation, knowledge, and understanding even about life itself, not just about worshiping, not just about going to church, not just about having a relationship with a power that is higher than ourselves, but also having those spiritual experiences throughout our life and allowing ourselves to contemplate, allowing ourselves to assess and process things. These are other types of spiritual aspects of our life, because remember, we are a spirit being and we have a soul, which has including our mind, our will, and our emotions, and we live in a body. So let's go back over those 8. The first one is our emotional, our financial, our environmental, our intellectual, our social and relational, our intellect, our physical, our occupational, and our purpose, and our spiritual. So we've got all these areas in our life that we need to focus on. We need to understand that these are the very places where the river can flow in our life. What do I mean by that? Well, if we don't take time in relationships, then the capacity in our emotional health or the capacity in our relational health could be hindered because we are not allowing that river to flow. If we're not focusing on time in our financial, that can also impact our capacity. It can impact our ability to experience those 10 things that we all need. Feeling secure and feeling safe. So you see how these rivers interact together with the 10 components. They interact with the capacity that we have to live. And so if we want to have a happy life, if we want to have a whole life, if we want to address grief at its root, then we have to examine and become self-aware, not only of our quotient or capacity, but also of the components or the 10 things that we need, and also the rivers that are flowing in and out of our life, and making sure that we keep our finances strong, we keep our emotions strong, we keep our environments healthy, we keep our relationship and our social life healthy, we keep our purpose and our occupation healthy, and we keep having spiritual experiences and living in a healthy way spiritually. So when we get all of those things, and once our core is very strong, and once we are balancing our life in a way that will bring about quality living, not just longevity, but quality living, then we can begin to remove the pain. Are you ready for the action process? Okay, we are ready for our first assignment of taking action. We have been talking all this time about the losses that you've experienced. From the very beginning, we identified the losses. We identified what grief was. We began to take a look at internally and become self-aware of the capacities we have, of the components we need, of the balance. All of these things are vitally important to our ability to process loss. But today, we're going to begin to go back to the losses that we've identified, and we are going to start our first activity. And that activity is telling our story. We have feelings attached to every life change that we experience. And because of that, those feelings have to be addressed. They have to be communicated and they have to be talked about. And in order to talk about the feelings that are attached with the occurrences in our life, we have to tell our story. So today, you are going to get an assignment. And that is really all I'm going to share with you today. Is I'm going to now explain what you are going to do over this next week. Instead of spending an hour watching a video, I want you to spend 45 minutes to an hour writing out your story of loss. Now, how you're going to do that is you're going to begin with writing out and telling us the things that have taken place that have caused you pain and you feel like you have lost. I want you to go back and start this storybook, and we're going to give you a handout. You'll find it in your email. And I want you to start with the earliest memory that you have of something that impacted you in the area of loss. Remember, I shared my story a little bit with you, and one of the first losses that I really remember as a child was the divorce of my parents. Now, when I began to think about the divorce of my parents and that loss that came about, I started to think a little farther back at some of the other losses that happened prior to that divorce. And I was able to remember some significant events of loss that took place. One of them was a loss of safety that I felt because I remembered my father following my mother around back and forth to work to see if she had actually gone from one job to the next. And I remember also him pulling the plugs on the car when she got home so that she couldn't leave. And I remember feeling afraid. And so one of my first losses was trust and safety that my home was supposed to offer me. I remember that particular event, and then I remembered some abusive events in my childhood between my father and I remembered certain issues that I had kept secret, that I had kept hidden, and a lot of them brought about shame, and they brought about fear, and they brought about unhealthy discoveries in my life. So I want you to go back, and I want you to think as far back as you can to the first loss that you remember. And then from that point, that's your starting of your story. And from that point, I want you then to begin to think from that age. It might be an age that you remember, it might be an event. It doesn't matter if you remember the age, just that you go back as far as you can to the earliest event. And I want you to write down the stories, even just highlighting them. My father abused me. I lost my favorite pet. My parents divorced. Something that happened to you in your school. Something that happened to you in your family. You are going to have to write your own events down. I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I don't want to bring up things that may not really fit your life. So I want you to go from that earliest event, and I want you to write down the series of losses from beginning at that point all the way to your present. And as you begin to think about those things, and as you begin to meditate on these different losses, I want you to think about these things. I want you to think about the unmet desires and wants that you had. One of the losses in my life was that my dad never came to any of my sporting events. He came one time, and that was one highlight that I had. But most of the time, 99% of the time, one of the losses I had was the support of my family in my extracurricular activities at my school. That my mother and my father never came to my events Another loss for me was that my father did not come to my graduation. So there are different things like this that were historic events or monumental events in my life where I felt that a desire that I had, a hope that I had, an expectation that I had wasn't fulfilled. Or I also want you to think about things that you've never really talked about, things that happened to you, experiences that you had that were losses that you suffered from the earliest memory all the way up to the present. So this is the activity that you need to take this next week, is writing down your story about the losses in your life. It may take you 30 minutes. You may be younger, you may be older, so based on the amount of time you've spent on the planet, your amount of losses will definitely be different. Now, some of you have had situations where you've lost a home or you've lost everything because of addiction. You've been incarcerated. That may be a loss. You might have lost custody of children. You may have had a loved one die. One of the significant things that happened to me was when I was about 12 years old when my favorite aunt died. And that was a significant event of loss in my life. Someone that I admired, someone that I looked up to. It was my first memory of death. So I want you to go through this experience, and I want you to write down the things that you believe are things that you've lost, expectations that you've had, dreams that you never got to realize, communications that you've never been able to say about specific events in your life. Are you ready to do the work? Are you ready to go after those things and find out what they are and begin to determine and understand the kinds of things that you personally have lost? There is no big loss and little loss. Remember, every loss and every relationship with the things and the people that we've lost is unique. It might be that your best friend moved away at a certain age. It may be when you graduated high school and you lost all contact with your classmates. It may be when you moved away to college or when you moved to a new neighborhood and a new home and you had friends in the old neighborhood, but in your new neighborhood you never actually made new friends. So whatever the situation is, I want you to really open up your heart and open up your mind and take this journey of writing down your story of loss. And that's all I have for you today. And when we come back in our chat room this week, we're going to have opportunity to talk about that experience and what it meant to us and how we processed some of those losses. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and it's time to do the work. So get moving to victory over grief.